Finding Home at 2:32, Good of the Many, or Child's Play. Subscriber to the Wesley Crusher Shirt of the Month Club, Icheb finally finds his parents, which should be a happy moment of reunion after his encounter with the Borg. But it becomes quickly obvious that something is off in this family reunion, as a sleepless Mazzotti tips off Seven to the circumstances surrounding Icheb's assimilation. She puts together that Icheb was the reason the Borg ship they found these kids on suffered a matrix collapse, and his geneticist parents try to send him back to the Borg as an engineered bioweapon. But not before Janeway rescues him and makes a Borg sphere look like an easy target. The premise is pretty mediocre, but we get a glimpse at a different side of Seven of Nine we don't really see again until Picard, the overconcerned parent dedicated to her adopted drone kids. Being split in half at 2:31, Double in Trouble, or Deadlock. This episode packed with asking a 9-month pregnant lady to do some work, and another ultimate Harry Kim must suffer moment. Trying to avoid Vidian space, Voyager gets copied, with one being slightly out of phase with normal time. Unfortunately, both share one antimatter supply, and one Voyager tries to save itself, unknowingly causes a ton of damage to the other, including Harry decompressed into space, and the death of one of the recently born Naomi Wildmans due to loss of power. This one really pulls at your heartstrings and keeps piling on as the Vidians show up anyway and try to harvest one of the Voyagers. Thanks to a tear in dimensions, Harry and the surviving Naomi go to the other side and make a complete Voyager set again, even if it is the one that sustained the most damage. Under the direction of fabulous Trek director David Livingston, the episode actually came in 9 minutes short because of his quick and punchy direction that caused an additional 2 days of filming, yet I don't find anything to be filler. Asking a stupid question at 2:30, Broken Shell, or Chrysalis. This episode is far more feel-good than complete substance, but I feel like it says a lot about Star Trek and its general mission statement, as the failed augments make their way back to the station under the guise of Admiral Patrick and Associates. Bashir's forced to push up his timetable to possibly cure Serena, even with the help of the augments to bend the laws of physics. Aside from a musical number that goes on way too long, watching Serena blossom makes for a really beautiful episode, though it may be a bit ethically questionable for her doctor to get into a relationship with her, as the augments work on a universe-level problem. They're sad to lose their companion. In the end, Serena shuts down and Bashir thinks his fix is wearing off. But really, she's just overwhelmed by her social choices going forward, and in the end heads out into the galaxy to make her way on her own. This is another great take on breaking down the stigmas of care. Killing your grandfather at 2:29, Paradox Shenanigans, or Children of Time. I'm not the biggest fan of stories that never really happened in the end, but damn if this one doesn't play with your heart, and getting there is definitely half the fun. As the Defiant is on its way back to the wormhole from patrol, Dax detects a planet with a strange energy field, and detour is in order. Unfortunately, contact with the barrier shocks Kira, who won't survive without starbase-level treatment, and Odo can't hold his shape. What the crew find on the planet is their own descendants. Apparently, Dax just got them into a predestination paradox to create a society of hundreds when they try to leave orbit. This gives a 200 years older Odo a chance to tell Kira exactly how he feels, and in the end, even alters the Defiant's trajectory so these people cease to exist. I actually feel bad for this colony that never existed by the end. Going Home at 2:28, Coming Around, or Family. This is one of those episodes I wouldn't personally rank this high on the list, but it is a fan favorite. Though it's worth mentioning that this episode was the last thing in the franchise Gene Roddenberry tried to exert control over. He wanted it pulled because he felt it was too much like a soap opera. While that's not my personal problem with the episode, the studio shut Roddenberry down and his health failed shortly after. For me, this has one great scene, a couple of okay scenes, and a lot of filler. Being the third part of what can be considered Trek's first three-parter, the Enterprise undergoes maintenance after the Borg incident, which gives crew members a chance to reunite with family. And in Picard's case, exorcise the demons put into him by the Borg. This is the episode where Jean-Luc goes from stern captain to compassionate man of the galaxy, as he gets into a fight with his estranged brother, who then helps him find himself and a new sense of family. Meanwhile, Worf is lamenting being a disgraced Klingon as his parents meander around the ship. Bev finds a holo recording in storage that her late husband made for Wesley, which seems convenient but makes for some nice character development, even though it's one of several logical closure points the episode skipped. It's a very hopeful episode, even though there's a ton that feels packed in for time. Embracing the dark side at 227, Crossing Over, or Mirror Mirror. Another of the major TOS classics, the reason it's not higher is really the opposite problem of our previous entry. This episode is solid basically the entire way through its run, but it doesn't have a major high point or great speech. It's purely fun up till we're introduced to Marlena purely for time, and her entire involvement feels contrived. But as far as TOS, we've only got a few more in the list to talk about, and you can consider this amazing compared to most of the series. As Kirk bargains with pacifists for dilithium, the landing party's beam up through an intense storm has them trading places with their mirror universe counterparts. Kirk gets to find out what it feels like to constantly be challenged for his command by upstarts like Chekhov. Scotty and Bones spend most of the episode trying to modify systems undetected to get them home before the universes move apart again. Uhura gets probably the most to do of any episode in the series for her character, and Nichelle Nichols nails the execution, particularly the flirtation-turned-murderous intentions moments with Sulu. For some reason, in the later third of the episode, we're introduced to the captain's woman, Marlena, who will literally do anything for a taste of power, and controls the captain's death ray. Kirk causes the downfall of the Terran Empire, though, as he convinces Spock that the universe doesn't have to be all fascist expansion. But that's a story for DS9 to tell. Jumping across time at 226, Paradox, or Relativity. This is probably the time thriller that has the most twists and turns across the franchise. Turns out Captain Braxton from back in Future's End has had enough of cleaning up Janeway's time messes, and decides it'd just be better to put a bomb on Voyager and eliminate it from the timeline altogether. To stop him, a younger version of himself and other time police recruit 7 of 9 to go back through Voyager's time periods to figure out when the weapon is placed and by who. Along the way, I'd like to give it up to the model team that created Utopia Planitia on their own time, because despite the budget not being there for it, they wanted to show it off, and boy didn't they deliver at a high level. After failing a few times and being re-recruited, she manages to enlist Janeway's help and stop Braxton. It's an edge-of-your-seat thriller that will leave you hating temporal mechanics if you try to analyze the episode too deeply. Losing a friend at 225, Compromised, or Project Daedalus. This is the point in Discovery's Season 2 where all the plots start to come together and make sense. Admiral Cornwell pays Disco a visit and demands to speak to Spock alone. Through the course of the episode, we learn Spock's supposed murderous footage is all holographic fakery, and they start to suspect Section 31 has something to do with it. Rolling up on 31's base in a ship that's currently wanted by the Federation might not be the smartest idea, as they have to maneuver an ever-changing minefield and find no living person is currently controlling the shadowy part of Starfleet. But an AI known as Control is in control, who has, unfortunately, compromised Arium and uses her to try and take out the away team and get control of the sphere data Discovery acquired early in the season. This is a thriller with just about everything one could want in a Trek episode. If you don't like one part, wait a minute, because so much is crammed into this one, there's definitely something for everyone here. Closing out the block and the Waxana Troy appearances on this list at 224, Compassionate Care, or Half a Life. The episode is so self-aware of Lwaxana Troi's mediocre reception, it starts with Picard literally peeking around corners hoping to avoid Mrs. Troi, to no avail. She even declares herself the ship's official ambassador of goodwill as a scientist comes on board to test a device that might reinvigorate the system's dying star. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, but what does is Mrs. Troi trying to convince Dr. Timothy that his culture's practice of ending a life at 60 so families aren't burdened by the infirm is barbaric, and he should seek Federation asylum. Despite him being the foremost scientist trying to save his world, the planet's leaders cut him off from his work and won't even take updates, because his time has come. We also get our first look at Michelle Forbes in this episode that would go on to play Ensign Ro. This might generally be Majel Barrett Roddenberry's best overall appearance in the franchise. She is so impassioned. Truly, thank you, Majel.
Ah, computer. That program is available.
Thanks, Majel. Thanks, Majel.
Hull breach on deck 1. Emergency force fields inoperative.
Thanks, Majel.
Warp core overload in 4 minutes, 55 seconds. Warning. Regeneration cycle incomplete.
Thanks, Majel.
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Thanks, Majel.
Jean-Luc! You delicious man!
Thanks, Majel.
Daughter of the 5th house, holder of the sacred chalice of Wreath, heir of the holy rings of Beta Z, and what are you doing for dinner? Do something to relieve the tedium of all this work.
Thanks, Majel.
Mr. Holmes, spread it. Here I am.
Thanks, Majel.
Why not simply evacuate the planet? I am a woman dressing for a man.
Thanks, Majel.
Oh, that's all right. I can make enough conversation for both of us.
Thanks, Majel.
It's a barbaric ritual.
Thanks, Majel.
His orders don't apply to me. No, I'm a hateful woman.
Thanks, Majel.
Why not let everybody die when they die?
Thanks, Majel.
You are making a statement about the sanctity of life, and it will be heard, Timothy. Your father's work may save your world, my dear. I would hardly consider that irrelevant.
Thanks, Majel.
Is it possible I was wrong to encourage Timothy to choose life?
Thanks, Majel.
I promise I won't cause any problems down there.
Thanks, Majel.